Hey everyone, can you hear me? I hope so. Because I just got a new mic and I hope it's better. I'm just waiting for the comments. So, mic sounds great. Okay, cool. Thanks everyone for tuning in to this live stream. Today I will just be showing off the current Lookdev lighting template I have set up for my personal use. And I've got a few tricks here which are pretty nice for this setup, and I will just show you the general idea of Katana and why it is so much more easy to use instead of Maya or any other package which uses this workflow. Okay, let's just minimize from one speaker. Maybe I need to see if I can output it stereo somehow. Let's see. Advanced audio monitoring. Only left. Down mix to mono. Maybe this is better. Let me know if this is better, or is it still left and right only? Just left only. Cool, that's fixed. Awesome. Alrighty, so what my main idea is for a Lookdev template is it should be very easy and you should be able to test it in different environments, and especially also if you have different assets you want to test that as well. So the main idea of this is I have a drop down menu on the top here where I can choose my assets. I have now a few predefined assets like some geometry, right? And then I've got a few environment lights. It's just for this time. And then I have a drop down for quality. So I have low, medium, and high settings. And what I also have, I've got interactive render filters. So on top of those previous settings, what I can do, I can, for instance, globally disable depth of field, or I can enable or disable the interactive rendering without going to the settings node and toggling it over there. And I've got render resolutions or AA samples, bucket sizes. And this is a custom thing you can add or delete them, whatever you want to do. It's like customized. And in bigger companies, they have live interactive filters. So it's actually a template, an external template, which the artist itself cannot really change. So it gives the developers lots of flexibility to output new ways to help artists work easier, I guess. So I just want to dive in quickly and just show you what I got. So on the top here, I've got, this is my data stream, right? So this is where the assets come in and the cameras and all that stuff. So this is the first thing which happens. So I've got the main camera on the top. It's just a regular render camera. I define it as main, and I have a test cam, which is my kind of perspective camera, because in Katana you cannot automatically render from the perspective camera. So what I did, I created another camera, which is a test cam, which will be in the end the perspective. And as you can see, there's actually a spelling in here, test cam. So now this is fixed. Then I'm merging them together in one stream. And if I move the chat over here, and if I press V, I make the I highlight the output of the scene graph from that purple point. So as you can see, my cameras are in here, my main and my test camera. And then I have a few offsets. These camera offsets are for the specific assets. So when I switch assets, the output of, or the camera position is aligned to fit the frustum, for instance. So this is happening in here. And geo in, if I go into this group or just open it up, you can see here all my Alembic files which are coming in. Then I'm transforming them a bit. T3D is a transform 3D node, which helps you position stuff in the viewport. And then CC asset is a collection. So I'm creating collections. It's kind of like face sets in Maya or selection sets. So a collection is a set of certain attributes or assets or shaders or whatever. And they go into this geo switch, and this switch is a variable switch. And this is being driven by this drop down on the top. So whenever I change, let's say, the asset to a different pattern, these will be selected, and then the switch is driven accordingly. So when I change this to reference ball, it's the first line, and if I go to, let's say, dragon, it will automatically go into the dragon stream. So this is how that works, and I will obviously show it to you as well in a second when we render that whole thing. So this is the data stream, and here's my material stream. So what happens here is I am creating shaders and assigning them to the collections. So the base shader, this is kind of like the Lambert one in Maya. So this is what I'm creating here. This is assigned to everything in the scene. And then I have a few different shaders, which are currently not cleaned up. They they are specific shaders for my reference sphere scene. So I'm not sure if I will remove them from here. I guess I will at some point. And then is the Lookdev group. This is a big group. I will show that to you in a second. And then in here is the CC all collection create all, and all materials so are being assigned to this collection. So root world geo, and then slash star means everything in the geo group gets this collection. And the importance of that is that all my objects get this Lambert 1 shader, and in the material assign stack, I assign it at the first instance of this. So my MA all gets the collection all, and then this shader is being assigned, which is the Lambert 1 in Maya's case. And then I have different other shaders which go on top. And then this disabled node here, this is my final output of my Lookdev group, the shader. So the AI asset is the shader which is being output from the Lookdev scene or Lookdev group, and it's being assigned to the collection asset. And if you go up to the data stream again, you can see that I'm creating these collection create assets for each certain object I have. So dragon, rhino, skelet, all that stuff, right? Okay, and then I've got my environment set up. So this is also the same principle. It's being driven by the drop-down menu, which is a global graph state variable. And if I go in here, it's kind of the same thing. I have a main gaffer which has my environment sphere in here, and then I'm just overriding them. So I'm reading from the scene what is currently in my scene, and then I'm doing overrides on that. So I'm just switching out the file paths, as you can see there. And then I have the main gaffer, and in here you would add additional lights. So you go into main, for instance, and you would create a new rig, which would be, let's say, key lights or rim lights or whatever. And then in here you would create a new light, which would be, let's say, Arnold. Where's area? Not sure, I never used this so far. Mesh light, quad light, this one. So in here you can actually plug in a texture, and this is how you would create a beauty light, for instance. And then the render is my default settings, which I have for K2A. A few default ones, and then the quality setup is the same. It is being driven from these global scene graph variables. So, but this is a live group, which means I cannot change it. It's just something I've set up previously, but the artist itself cannot change what is a low setting, what is a high setting, which is very good because studios want to provide render output which is always consistent. So you always have a consistent high setting. That's why it's locked off. And my high settings in this case, I guess I would need to adjust them at some point, would be 3 bounces, 10 AA, and then 1 diffuse and 1 spec sample and 3 SSS. It's pretty high. It's not pretty crazy, but it's I would say at high settings. And then in the AGS overrides, which is Arnold global settings overrides, the user could override those settings, but it's something, well, this is more kind of production environment thinking. If I just use it for personal use, I would, I guess, change them in one node anyways. And then the very crazy AUV setup. It's a bit overkill, unfortunately. I hope there will be an easier way at some point to create AUVs. But again, this is a one-time setup, so after that, after you've set it up, it's done and you can just use it. The cool thing is I have an expression here. It takes a current project directory, which is development Katana, where the scene file is, and then I'm creating two new folders, output and then AUV. The output name is the name which is on top there, and then I'm taking the current frame and then I'm creating this output path, and this happens for all the outputs. This is diffuse indirect and it's all automatic, which is pretty awesome. Yeah, and then is the output for the render. That's mostly that. Okay, so let's show this in action, I guess. And if you have any questions now, feel free to ask. I just ran down through the whole setup and I will go into the Lookdev in a bit, but feel free to ask any questions about this if you have any questions how I did that or that. As you can see, the comments are on top and I'm happy to answer them. Yeah. Okay, so first, the thing is the Katana is not as good in viewport representation, especially if you have a high poly count. It tends to get slow pretty quick in the viewport. So mostly you would not expand everything in the viewport just because it's heavy. But I will show you anyways how it looks. Okay, for instance, this is now my dragon scene. And so if I switch my assets in the top here, they are automatically being switched out at the bottom as well. So now I'm switching to bird, and now you see that there's a bird, and it's all happening automatically. There's nothing I need to do. I just switch a global variable and it all switches out. And well, I use Arnold and PRman. I use PRman mostly at work and at home Arnold. So yeah, that's my most frequent used renders for now. Let's say what else do we have? Let's say pillar, and then it's being switched out. Yeah. Okay, so that is that, and then obviously I've got my render settings, low, medium, high, and currently, as you can see, I have this disabled. So currently I don't assign the Lookdev shader. It's just the default kind of Lambert one, which is my base shader. So if I would go to the bottom here, interactive preview render, and check the monitor. Monitor is like the frame buffer. And what else do I have? Progressive is off, which means I don't have the interactive like these progression. It's just the final render now. And this is, for instance, what this pillar asset looks like. And it is, as you can see, with the base shader assigned. So let's say I want to switch environments. So I would just switch from studio to, let's say, campus, whatever that is. And now hit redo the render. I press Control / to redo the last render. Katana for freelance as well. It costs a lot. So if you want to use it as a freelancer, you would need to pay the license for Katana and as well the Arnold license, which is expensive. So if you can afford that, sure, do that. It's nice to use and it's very easy because you always get a consistent output as a freelancer then. So this is, as you can see, I just switched out environments and this is how it renders. And then let's try, what else do we have? Garage, let's see how that is. And obviously it takes some time to set up these templates. I spend now, I don't know, I would say at least 5 hours in total to set the whole thing up and trial and error and see how this stuff works and all that. But I'm pretty honest, it's fully worth it, and it's so much easier than doing all this in Maya, because in Maya you would need to, I know, redo it all the time, and it's just a more refreshing way of working, I would guess. So these are my templates or my environments, and then render settings. So let's just disable the progressive. It's not that noisy anyways. Let's just go. Oh yeah, by the way, the diffuse, the AOVs are in this drop down here, so I can just quickly switch to my inputs, indirects. Let's bump this up. Diffuse indirect, nothing. Why? Maybe the AOV is wrong. There should be something in here, I think. Spec indirects, interesting. Yeah, anyway, so now let's switch it to, let's say, high settings and render this. And if you want to output this render to your disk, you would create an output node, I think, or just a render node. And it has automatically the paths set up here because I set them up in the AOVs. And all you would need to do is right click and disk render. That would be that. Let's see how this gets along. Okay, it's still rendering. This will take a while because it's pretty high settings. So, what you guys, do you've got any other questions about this? I was just planning to show you a quick, the quick setup, what I have been doing, and it should be a fairly quick live session today. But if you have any questions regarding this, please feel free. So let's see what the render does. Oh, I think the render is blocking my OBS stream, or it's actually slowing it down. But I think we're back, so yeah. So let's compare those renders quickly. Yeah, you can actually see it is a lot nicer. You can see that there is now more bounces in here, and it's very clean, which is awesome. How channel big layouts in Katana? Let's say a big forest. Well, Katana is mostly a Lookdev lighting software, so you wouldn't create those layouts in Katana. You would mostly export the alembics or your caching, your cache somewhere, and then import them. And obviously you would need to assign the shaders, so you would, in your, I know, layout package, if you it might be Maya's. People use Maya to create layouts, or Clarice or whatever, and in there you can actually create those sets already and import them as an alembic, and you get those sets already in Katana, and you would just use them for assigning shaders. Yeah, that would be that. Currently I'm not using Cryptomatte. I'm planning to set this up for my template as well. Currently I've seen there are some issues setting this up, so I need to investigate how I would do it. But it's for sure a plan to do that. You can download Katana for free from their website as a non-commercial. That's that you can do right now and learn how it works, and go to FXPhD if you need learn those tutorials on there, which are very helpful, especially for Katana stuff. So let's switch back to a low setting and switch out my asset to, let's say, dragon. Render this guy. So feel free to ask any more questions. I'm just waiting for the render to resolve. So yeah, as you can see, the dragon has rendered pretty quick. And imagine now you have a shader and you want to test it for different assets. Let's say a subsurface scattering shader, and you want to test it on different scales or whatever. And in this way, you can really test it, and it's very helpful. So I will jump into the Lookdev scene now, or not scene, but group, and I will show you how that is set up. It's actually pretty straightforward. I don't have a special monitor. It's a Dell monitor, but it doesn't have a very specific wide color gamut or something. It's just more or less a high-res monitor, but it's nothing too fancy, I would say. Okay, and so let's go to my node graph and go to the Lookdev scene. Let's first enable the material assigned for assets. And if I go in this group, control middle click goes directly into the group. I've got a few shaders, so I've set up a few shaders in my previous tutorials already. So I've got a car paint shader, I've got a dust shader, painted metal shader, and an SSS shader, which is the new one with the random walk, which I actually used for the shell render. I'm not sure if you have seen that. Let me just bring this up quickly. First need to find it. Where did I put it to? Almost got it. There it is. So with the random walk, I guess if you guys have seen this already, this was rendered in Katana with this template using the SSS shader, actually with this shader there, and you can see how really well it works. And I did a few more things though. I was using thin film as well and a few other things. So let's just create another backdrop. Each backdrop defines a shader. And let's bring this guy up, double click, change the name to live material. Yeah, this is the ACES color management is possible if you set it up using environment variables. Because currently I just have the vanilla Maya installed, and I still need to set up for ACES. I'm not sure how exactly it works. I will read some docs and ask the developers a bit. But I need to set up as well the ACES setup for sure. So if you want to create a shader, an Arnold shader or a RenderMan shader, whatever, what you would need to do is create a RenderMan or Arnold shading node, like I call it ASN Arnold shading node, or I think it's called PSN for a Pixar or PRman shading node or something. And if you would do that, you create it, you go into the settings, and you go to the node type and go to your shader, right? And then you have your shader, let's say surface shader. And then it's there. And then you need to rename that. And it's a bit tedious. So there's a thing which you can do in Katana. So it's a shortcut. I have set it up so it won't be there for you. Alt-O, and it has all the shaders already. So if I would write surface now, I don't need to go through this whole process. I can just create it, and it's here. That's a very easy way to do it. And now I want to connect the out color of the shader into my material slot, which is this guy, which is a network material, and I connect it up to this guy. So let's just do a dot. If I press dot on the keyboard, it creates a dot here. And now this shader is being connected to this network material. And let's just rename this, or it doesn't even matter. Okay, so that's connected. And in my scene graph, what I want to do now, I want to make sure that I have interactive or live session enabled for my object, which is my geo group and everything below it, and materials and everything below that. So if you have a big scene, I wouldn't recommend using this guy, which is if you shift click on it, it selects all the dependents as well. If you have a big scene, it slow down your live render. But I've got a really simple scene, so this is totally fine. All right, so that's enabled. So let's head up a directory, Lookdev going in, assigning the asset to my collection, and let's hit the live render. Right click, I just save just in case, and hit live render. So let's see what we get. You can also right click on these little arrows everywhere and you get your history. So let's just do that. It's easier to navigate for sure. Okay, so this is now the dragon shader in the garage environment. Let's just shift right click is a render region. And I want to change now the environment. So I don't want to work in the garage. I want to work in, let's say, the commercial one. Unfortunately, I'm not sure, it does not work on my machine currently. If I switch the global variables, it does not update my render. So what I would need to do, I would need to do it again, live render, and that should fix it. What's going on? Is it starting? Oh, I think it needs to cache it first. There we go. So this is now the commercial one. It's a pretty strong light, as you can see. I would need to rotate it somehow, but for now this is what it is. So in the shader, this is now the general things, right? That's nothing too fancy, but I can control it now, and you can see it's updating live. Let's say I want to create a metal, right? So I would go to base color and choose something really red. There's also a color paint shader, which I don't want to show you right now. And then you would increase the metalness, and then you can control the roughness, and then you have a metal shader. As simple as that, right? Let's say you want to scatter it, right? Subsurface scattering. So then you don't have metal. So let's just remove that. And I guess if you have a fully SSS shader, the diffuse is totally ignored. So let's go into scattering, enable that. Go to random walk, which is the new mode. You can see the radius is very large currently. But first let's change the color. I think you can just middle drag the colors, and you see this is now my base color. And you can see how it already works on thin parts. It gets really translucent, which is awesome. I would say it's pretty cool. This is now my radius color, and you can see how it affects it. So the thin parts get yellow now because this is the shallowest depth is blue, and this is what it's being output to. And then obviously you have your scale, and I want to control that as well. So if I reduce the scale, you can see it gets more volume, and it gets like a more solid object. And this is just defining how deep the ray penetrates the object. So let's just do 0.25 for instance, and you can see it's going in a bit deeper now. And you have the anisotropy, which it's a way how the rays are biased towards the narrow side, or the penetration depth kind of thing. So it exaggerates the effect kind of. If you go higher or more to 1, it's stronger edge effect. If you go less than 1, it's more solid looking. And you can see what's happening here in real time. So I'm not sure. It looks like almost watermelon, actually, the shader, I would say. Feel free to shoot questions, right? I'm reading them. The session will end pretty soon, so keep the questions coming. So, and now I've set up the scale, right? So if I want to change my asset now, I guess I would need to restart the render, but I want to change the asset now to skeleton. Okay, so you see it it did not translate the stuff, so I need to restart it. Live. In your opinion, what is the advantage using Katana over doing this in Maya or Houdini? I think it's just the ease of it, like it's ease of use. It's so simple to, like, if you do this once, it takes a while to set it up, I guess. But after that, it's super simple. You can just export your Lookdev shaders, your Lookdev templates, and all you have in your lighting scene, you just import the Lookdev template or whatever, and it just works, man. You can quickly change shots out. And it's so tedious to do that in Maya. I'm not sure about Houdini. I just started with Houdini, so I don't really know 100% how it works there, especially for multi-shot workflows and stuff like that. Yeah. But I have been working in Maya a lot, and like also you have the issue of Maya is a bit unstable. And Katana, in my opinion, is very stable software, and it's so fun to work with this. And you can see now, the same shader works pretty good in a different scale. This skillet is real scale. It's 180 centimeters high, and you can see the effect is working the same way, which is pretty awesome. Thin areas get the scattering, like the nose, the eyebrows, or whatever. And the do I have it here? No, or not? No. Yeah, and I must say I'm pretty happy with this. And if I will do upcoming tutorials, especially the material series, I will be just doing this in here. There's no really setup for me anymore. I have it set up. I just switch this to my render scene reference ball. Oh, something happened. The camera updated, but not the asset. That's interesting. And I will change this to studio or whatever, medium, and then I'm ready for the tutorial. So that's it. This is a big help for me as well, just to get up to speed and up and running everything. Yeah. So again, any questions? I think this will be it for now, for today. We got a big Christmas party tonight, so I need to prepare for that. Yeah, and this would be now my, you see my shading ball scene. Okay, then if there is nothing else, then thank you guys for tuning in for this short live session just about my Katana setup. Yeah, I might be recording a new tutorial tomorrow, and it will be uploaded, I guess, pretty soon. So again, thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you in the next session. And yeah, I'm also happy that my stuff helps you guys out. It's nice to read those comments that you get better while watching my tutorials. So it's really nice, and it motivates me a lot. Anyways, thank you guys. See you in the next one. Bye.